GuruSant Singh here with Michael Elden, and Michael has agreed to give an interview to give his experience about when he was in 3HO and with Yogi Bhajan, and I think he's like to talk a little bit about what happened to his daughter there when she was around Yogi Bhajan. So go ahead and just tell us, Michael, your experience and what you've been going through.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you in the first place. This has been going on in my mind for a while, to do or not to do, but I decided to do it because let me just give you a little bit of a history how I joined. After I got divorced, I was looking for something else, and I ran into the Golden Temple restaurant, vegetarian, and I was vegetarian at that time. And there was a yoga course, and 3 weeks, and I told the teacher that I was going to stay only for 2 weeks.
Was that excuse me, was that Amsterdam a Golden Temple restaurant there? I've been there before. Is that the one?
Yes, it was just, I think it was just open for a couple of months or so when I joined.
Oh, okay, yeah, that was, yeah, okay.
So I told the teacher I'm going to stay for 2 weeks, of course, and then I'm going back home. But the 2 weeks became 10 years.
Oh, wow.
I was totally convinced about Kundalini Yoga. And back then the teacher was a very, very good teacher. I won't mention his name, but he's playing in one of the major bands right now in the 3HO.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and what was your name? What was your name that Yogi Bhajan had given you? You told me before.
There was Surya Singh.
Surya Singh. Okay, okay, okay. Go ahead.
Son. And so finally, when he came, I started to GuruSant Singh. He was a great teacher and a Dutch guy, and I connected with him very well, and we had started to set up the very first yoga camp in southern France. And we back then had 86 people, and that was growing and growing and growing and growing. And nowadays they have like nearly 2,000 people. So that's what I was involved with, and then I asked Yogi Bhajan I'd like to get married.
Was that in the 70s? Was that in the 1970s?
And I think it was as early as 1974.
74. Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
So I asked him, I like to be a Sikh, and I like to get married, and so he got me a wife from the ashram in Toronto, Canada.
Okay.
So back then in 1979, I joined the Tantric Yoga Festival in Florida. I think it was in Daytona Beach. And I flew to Toronto, and they picked me up there, and a couple of weeks later, we got married in the ashram. We got the blessing and blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
So after 7 months, the marriage broke down because, I studied quite a bit of astrology, especially Hindu astrology, and when you have a 12th house afflicted within your chart, you should never get married in the first place. But anyway, so he got me married, and I married her, and after 7 months the marriage fell apart. Then I got in trouble with the Mukhya Singh Sahib of the ashram in those days, and he said, if you don't go back to her, I'm going to make sure you never enter the United States ever again, and I'll make sure you never get to see your daughter. and that
now, excuse me, this is your daughter by a previous marriage, then? Is that correct?
Yes, my daughter in a previous marriage, my first marriage.
Okay, and in this first marriage, she was not, this woman was not in 3HO, the first marriage. Is that correct?
No.
Okay.
No. So
okay.
I trusted this Singh Sahib, and he said, Yogi Bhajan, he was in Puerto Rico at that time, and then he called me after I called him several times and asked him what to do with my daughter. He said, bring her to the United States, we'll set her up to go to a school in India, and she will become a great Khalsa. So I trusted him, and I did that. So she went to the ashram in Española and went to school there, and she had a rough time. But I was very blind in those days, and I never saw it really that she was suffering.
Okay, so let me just ask you another thing. Okay, so this was still in the 1970s then, is that correct?
Yeah, I think it was in 1970, in December 1979, towards the end of the year.
Okay.
I flew to Toronto. After 2 weeks, I got married.
Okay, and then, so this was just around the same time period that you talked to Yogi Bhajan, and he told you to bring your daughter to Española. Is that correct, to the ashram there? Okay.
Yes, that is correct.
And you had been to his ranch there, his big ranch, before or not?
Oh yeah, yes, Dome. I've been there many times because I did some work there as well, a couple of weeks, and I saw the little A-frame on the top of that. I think that the water thing, you know, like the water that's coming from the mountain and sort of going through all these little pieces of land.
Yes.
There's an A-frame there, and I saw the dome. I've been in the ashram there. Yes, yeah, I stayed quite some time.
Okay. So you were there in Española. You brought your daughter there. Is that correct? Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Oh,
yes.
okay. And then did Yogi Bhajan did he take her on as like what he called a secretary? Is that what happened?
No, that's later on because.
Oh, that's later on.
Like
Okay.
11 years in that time, and well, let me tell you, the marriage broke down, and I got involved with the Mookie Singh Saab, and then in Toronto, and then I was gonna beat the shit out of the guy. Threatened me not to see my daughter ever again. He should never do that. Anyway, so he sort of mellowed down, and he apologized later on and accepted that. So my daughter was in Española, and she started to speak English a little bit, and she grew up within the environment of VHO secretaries, and back then I also had after the marriage I fell in love with a beautiful girl. She was from England, and she stayed in Toronto, and I lived with her for 3 years, and then finally Yogi Bhajan came, and he told her to come to Los Angeles to become a secretary of him. Oh. And then she left me, and I really, it was very painful for me what he did.
Okay, so let me just interject here real quick. Okay, so you were in Española for how long before you went back to Toronto again?
Oh, just a couple of weeks to do some work on the
Oh, just a couple of weeks.
build.
Okay.
And
your daughter came with you to Toronto, or did she stay in Española?
No, we traveled to Toronto, and I brought her to Española.
Oh, you brought her to Española. This was after you had visited there the first time, right?
That was the first time, yes.
Oh, okay. So then you said you went to Los Angeles after that, right?
She grew up there in the ashram, in the environment of the ashram, and then finally he met her as secretary.
Okay, this was in Los Angeles.
No, I think it was in Española.
Oh, in Española. Okay, so she was growing up in Española then.
Yeah, but she went also to India school, to the GuruSant school.
Okay, I'm understanding now.
In there, yes, and I met a great guy like Nanak Dev Singh. I was a good friend with him, and we stayed in touch, and he stayed at my place several times, and he got married in Germany. I met him in Germany several times. And he was there, the sort of like overseer of the ashram in Missouri.
Missouri. Oh, yeah, I was going to ask you. So the school at that time was in Missouri. That was in the early 80s, in the early 1980s, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I visited there in 1982 to that school in Missouri. It was up on the mountains there. I remember that. Okay. So now, how long was she there at the school for?
I think she was there like 4 years or so.
4 years. So that brings us to probably about 1984, 1985 or something like that, right?
Correct.
Okay, and then she came back here to Los Angeles?
Yes.
Okay.
She went to Los Angeles Española, like going back and forth.
Okay, I see. And then when was it? Was it after this time then that Yogi Bhajan instructed her to become one of his secretaries? Was this around that time?
That I don't know, but it must have been around that time because she was like a mature child, like 16 or 17.
Okay.
And she was around the secretaries, and I went to Florida yoga camp several times. And my other daughter from the Netherlands, she came over to see her sister.
Okay.
So I told my daughter, say, you know, I'm leaving the 3HO, and I had it, I'm gone, and I'm not going to be involved anymore. So if you want to quit me, you can come right now, and we step right out of it. And she said, no, I want to stay a Sikh, and I will be a Sikh for the rest of my life. I like it here.
Okay.
So I said, okay,
so
that's your decision.
what was it that motivated you to leave 3HO or to leave Yogi Bhajan?
Because of the sex scandals around Yogi Bhajan, because of the money thing, you know, like a lot of money. They're very stingy, like tight-fisted people. They couldn't even afford a penny for the poor in those days. And what I've seen in Española, in the tantric lines, and the way all these mukhya Singh Saabs, like, you know, they're like in the 40s and the 50s, they're talking about girls like, oh, look at this girl. Oh man, I tell you, I like to do her. You know, talking about sex.
Yeah.
And things like that was going on. And I was there, I heard it, and I sort of laughed too, you know, and that later on I thought, you know, this isn't right, you know, it isn't correct.
Yeah.
And because of all the sex scandals, and the first scandal that happened was in France with the I think it was the third or the fourth yoga festival, because we set up the camp for Yogi Bhajan to come over, and we had like almost nearly 200 people, and we had to stand guard around his cabin at nighttime, and we could hear the secretary he was with having orgasms, you know, like,
oh my God,
he was having sex with her.
Ah.
Yeah, and we could hear that. She was going, I mean, she's not there saying that because she likes a dinner or so. No, she was having sex with him. And that's the first time I didn't want to even talk about it because it wasn't true. And, you know, like Khalsa, we rule the world and blah, blah, blah. So we were in that kind of mind, you know, state of mind. But that's the first time I got involved with, you know, what really was going on.
So that was in the early 1980s when you passed by Yogi Bhajan's cabin. That was at the solstice in Europe. Is that right? And you heard this secretary there that was with him. You heard her like it was like a orgasm or something. You heard, like, yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And that was in the early 80s, before you came to Toronto, right?
I think no, because I was the right hand of GuruSant Singh. He was the architect, and he designed the festival. And I stood always next to his side. And I think the first festival was like in '74.
Oh, okay.
Like that. And
okay.
Like a couple years later, so it was towards the end, like maybe 77 or so. You know.
Okay, yeah, I understand now. That was before you came to before you came to Toronto, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, got it now. So that sort of put a seed of doubt in your mind at that point, but you didn't really think about it too much, right?
No, because we basically, you know, like I was single at that time, and you know, I mean, there's a lot of women, beautiful women, that you know they're falling in love, you know, dreamy kind of people, and you know you connect with them, and you know this guy is going in the tent with this girl, and I was doing basically the same thing.
Okay.
You know, like I was met a lady, jumped in the tent, did tantra with her, wanted to have a relationship with her, and after a couple months it broke down because she was too far away from Germany or France or Spain or whatever, so.
Okay.
This happens all the time. No big deal.
Okay.
And not in those days.
Okay. So let's get back to your daughter then. You had left her there in Espanola, was it? Where she was in 1985 or so? Okay, she'd come back from the school. She'd come back from the school in India, right?
She grew up in Espanola, back and forth from Los Angeles, and they were taking it out all the time. And she had a birthday one day. He took her with a lot of young girls to a store, and he's throwing all kind of jewelry on the ground, and she had to pick it up. It was sort of his way of giving her a present on her birthday.
Okay.
You know, like a.
Okay, so you were decided to leave 3HO or Yogi Bhajan, and you asked your daughter to come with you. Is that right? And she didn't want to.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when this thing happened with this Surya Singh, I had a lot of question marks. And finally, I met a beautiful lady, and I was very much in love with her in Toronto. I stayed with her for 3 years. We lived together for 3 years. I wanted to get married with her, and Yogi Bhajan came, and he took her, and he said, yeah, you know, come to Los Angeles, I'll make you secretary. And she, at that time, was pregnant.
Oh, okay, okay, uh-huh.
What he did, and I was so stupid that I did it. He said, well, if it is within 40 days, it's nothing going on, it's no soul is in there, and, you know, he was suggesting, he didn't say it exactly, but he was suggesting in this kind of a lecture, and the way he was giving it, he was suggesting it, that if I wanted to have an abortion, nothing was going on, you know, like no big deal.
Okay.
So I was so stupid that I went to Buffalo to get an abortion, and I tell you, man, as of today, I'm in so much pain of that. And she came out of the clinic, and I was sitting with my bana, with my turban, bending, you know, with the pure ones and this kind of bullshit. And she was standing out of the clinic before she was going in. He said, let's just keep it, you know. I said, you know, we can do it because of the shame of the ashram, and we're not married, and Khalsa this and Khalsa that. So she went in like for 6 minutes. He came out. It was done.
I see.
And man, I tell you.
Wow, that must have been really hard. Yeah. That must have been really difficult. Yeah. So you got the impression that Yogi Bhajan wanted your, was it your wife at that point, or partner, to have an abortion? You got that impression?
Well, he didn't say go have an abortion, but he was giving a lecture like well, nothing was going on, and if I wanted to take it away, you know, I felt like he was suggesting it.
Yeah. Yeah, he had this...
That's what I felt.
Right.
He didn't say it in words like, go get an abortion. He didn't say it like that. But
yeah.
He was suggesting it in another way.
Yeah, I'm sure you were aware of that philosophy that Yogi Bhajan had, that the soul doesn't enter the womb until 40 daur 100. Well, I'm not sure. It was 120 days or something like that. I don't know, but that. Oh, it was after 40 days, or it was 100. I think it was 120 days. But anyway, but you got the impression that it was okay for as far as he was concerned to have an abortion at that time. You thought it was okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I understand now. Okay. So then at that point you decided to leave Yogi Bhajan for these different reasons, that you felt that there was that Yogi Bhajan was into the sex, he was into power. These Mukhiya Singh Sabs, you said, were into the same thing: sex, money, and power. And so you decided to leave 3HO. Is that right?
After that incident, he took her to Los Angeles and Orte Espanola, and that was the last time I ever saw her.
Yeah.
And I called her several times. Let's just get together, and I really love you, and blah blah. Anyway, she didn't come back. She went to Espanola ashram, and I met her a couple times after that because of the tantric yoga. And
this was your daughter? This was your daughter?
My daughter was staying. My daughter was staying with her a couple times. With
the partner you had then, is that right?
My partner, yes.
Okay, I see. Okay, so then when you made on YouTube that your daughter was raped by Yogi Bhajan, you said that in the comments, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how you know that.
She told when she was 17 years, and she writes in her book, but she told me also in person, she was 17 when she had to serve him with, I think, with medicine or vitamins or things like that, and he made her giving him oral sex.
Okay.
Perform oral sex on him.
Okay. And she talks about this in her book, and I believe the book is written in Dutch, right, at this point. So,
That's correct.
yeah.
Yes.
So from your translation of the text that she wrote, she talks about how Yogi Bhajan commanded her to have oral sex with him. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And what were the circumstances? Does she talk a little bit about the circumstances around that? Was it like she was a secretary? You said she would bring him his medicines and then he would instruct her to have the oral sex?
Vitamins. Well, she doesn't go into details like that, but I remember when it happened, she had a friend, very good male friend in Virginia, in Herndon, Virginia. And she asked him to give her money so she could take an airplane going back home, because she said that it was it for her. And sort of closed all doors, and she left. And 2 days after it happened, she came to the Netherlands, and all of a sudden she was ringing the doorbell and opened it, and she was there.
Okay.
And she told me what happened.
Okay. So then she left 3HO after this. How long did that go on for? That she was with Yogi Bhajan and he was having oral sex with her. How long did that?
I believe she told me in her book she writes it happened just once.
Okay, once.
She told me that he was after her a little bit, and make her feel comfortable, things like that.
I see. Okay.
Sort of like setting up. It's like setting up a trap. So you step into it.
Yeah, like grooming. He was like grooming her, in other words, kind of thing.
Groom. Yeah, more or less, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And how old was she at that time?
17 years.
17 years old. Okay. And then did she talk about any other sexual abuse that she witnessed that Yogi Bhajan did? Did she talk about that at all?
She told me in person. Also, she writes in her book that she was introduced by Yogi Bhajan that if she wanted to have sex with some lesbian secretaries, she should go ahead and do it.
Oh.
And he would set her up just to get in touch with these two ladies, and if I wanted to have sex with them, I would be okay with him.
Oh, okay. And so, but she witness Yogi Bhajan have any other sexual acts with any of the other secretaries? Did she witness that at all?
No, she doesn't talk about that.
Okay. So it sounds like she was pretty freaked out, to say the least, about how Yogi Bhajan was treating her.
I remember her coming home, and she was more or less she was flipped out. Yes.
Yeah.
But a couple of days later, she didn't want to stay with me. But a couple of days later, she called her mother to went to visit her, and she decided to stay there.
Okay.
So from that moment on, she stayed with her mother.
Okay. So she came back to Amsterdam. This was probably the mid 1980s or so. Is that right? Mid 1985.
I think it was more. Let me think for a second. It was 1979, 80, 11. Yeah, maybe 86, 87, like that.
Oh, 86 or 87. Okay. And this was, just so you have a little background, I'm sure you're probably aware that the lead secretary, Premka Kar, had sued Yogi Bhajan This was around 1984. Yeah, and I remember this very clearly. In fact, I was on security duty for Yogi Bhajan much of this time when he was in Los Angeles. And they were trying to take his deposition for this lawsuit. You know, a deposition is where they take his testimony, okay? And Yogi Bhajan would always feign that he was ill or sick, okay? and so he would have his doctors, his Khalsa doctors sign off that he was sick and that he couldn't go to these depositions. But I know that he was perfectly well. We would go up to Beverly Hills and go to lunch and go out shopping to the jewelry stores there and everything in Beverly Hills. And so I know Yogi Bhajan was perfectly well. I mean, did your daughter ever talk about Yogi Bhajan being ill or anything like that, or was he pretty well?
Not specifically or in details. She did tell me being around him all the time and serve him, and yeah, more or less like that. And my ex-lady from Toronto, she lived there and she had a lot of contact with her, so she stayed with her. But all I do know is that 2 days after she came back to Holland and she said, I had it, it's done. Chapter is closed.
Yeah, okay, so she had, at that point, she had left the Yogi Bhajan at that point, about 1986 or so, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And the story about Premka, I know the whole story. I read it. I was there still.
Yeah.
I knew about it. So
you knew about it.
And I met Premka in person.
Oh, what did you get to talk to her at all, Premka? Did you get to talk to her at all?
I was in Florida. She's a very small woman, you know, like very little.
Yeah, yeah.
And I talked to her and about my daughter and great, you make a Khalsa and blah blah blah. And she was very friendly with me. That I remember. And that I did a great job and you know, things like that. Sort of more like briefly a few words we exchanged.
Okay, okay. You weren't very close to her then. You just knew her. You talked to her a little bit then, Premka.
Yeah, I talked to her a little bit, and you know, how are you? And
yeah.
Where you from Holland? Oh wow! And
yeah.
Oh yeah, I heard great things about Holland. Like that, you know.
Yeah.
And I know your daughter's here, and she could become a Khalsa. You did a great thing, and
okay.
You know, but at that time, nothing was going on yet.
Did you say?
After.
Would you say that the secretaries and Premka kind of encouraged your daughter to be one of the secretaries with Yogi Bhajan? Would you say they encouraged her?
That I don't know. I just know she hang around a lot of the ladies all the time.
Yeah.
And women that were very close to Yogi Bhajan, that were secretaries. She was always hanging around with them.
Okay.
And I remember she was in Florida in the tantric field. Then when I visited with my other daughter from the Netherlands, let me see. She did say what I saw was that she was always hanging around the secretaries.
Okay.
And she said, "No, I want to stay here. I want to become a true Khalsa.
Yeah.
And I want to, and I like here, and I'm not going back."
Yeah, yeah.
Like that.
So it's really pretty obvious that your daughter, and you both for that matter, observed things there that really disturbed you and were really hypocritical. I mean, you know, it seems like Yogi Bhajan, from what you said and what your daughters say, was basically into sex. He was into power and he was into money, basically. I mean, would you pretty much say that surmises what you experienced?
Money for sure, because I remember the very first yoga festival in France when he came. You know, like they took all the money and they never paid any taxes and left a very little bit for our expenses that we made. Because after all, you know, like I was involved in setting up the very first camp with GuruSant Singh. He was a great teacher, by the way. And yeah, it's all about money, big deals. And I've been there, you know, in Espanol Ashram, hanging around with the big shots, Mookie Singh Sabs all the time. And, you know, I'll talk about money and cash and about sex. That was it.
Yeah, yeah, right. And power, too. I mean, from what you tell me, Yogi Bhajan was into manipulating people and power. Would you say that's true?
That I totally agree, power and manipulating, that's for sure. Because he told me once, I remember that I wanted to, my marriage was going towards an end. And I didn't want to do tantric with her. And I was sitting there in the hall where we were doing the tantra. And they were telling Yogi Bhajan, oh, Surya Singh is not doing tantra with his wife. And I said, no, I would just want to be the monitor right now. And he came to me, he said, you get in line, otherwise I'll put a contract on you.
A what?
And I didn't know what that meant.
A what on you?
You get in line. He said, you're going to go sit in line there, do tantric, otherwise I'm going to put a contract on you.
A contract?
That's what he said.
You mean like to kill you? To kill you? Is that what he was thinking?
At that time, I did not know what it meant.
Oh.
I know a contract. You go to a work someplace and they give you a contract for a year to work someplace. I understand that contract. But then later on, they told me, he said, well, this is what it meant. But I said, don't worry, he was just joking. That's the first time.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
It's true. It's very true.
Yes, I understand now. Yeah, I understand. Okay, so is there anything else that you'd like to tell us about your experiences or your daughter's experience? You had mentioned, too, that you haven't been able to get in touch with your daughter now, or how is your relationship with your daughter now?
It is down the tube.
Okay. Why is it, do you think, that she doesn't want to contact you? Why do you think that is?
I can call my oldest son, and he will just talk to me.
Yeah.
And I can call my youngest son. He will talk to me, no problem. But I don't, like, since that happened, we used to meet at Christmas time all the time. And one day I was not invited anymore by her mother. And then I said, from that moment, the contact and the relationship with my children stopped because of what happened with her in the 3HO.
So you think
put it through.
You think that because you introduced her, your daughter, to Yogi Bhajan, and that she blames you for originally introducing you to Yogi Bhajan. Is that what you think?
I have the slight feeling that that's the reason behind it. I did have contact for a couple years after that because I did renovate her house. She was living in with her new husband. She got married, and after that, I think 4 or 5 months after that was Christmas time. I was not invited anymore, and that was it.
Okay.
And I never saw her again.
And she's never.
Children,
Yeah.
one set of twins. I've never seen the children.
I see. Well, that's really sad. I'm sorry that that's happened.
It is very sad.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if your daughter's watching this, I hope she can watch this, and maybe you can just reach out to her and tell her you'd really like to see her. Maybe you can just tell her you'd really like to see her.
I sent messages on Messenger to her husband.
Yeah.
And I talked to him, and he talked to me, and then I don't think he really hates me. But she said, well, it is her decision. And because I'm married with her, I just have to respect that.
Yeah.
But he's not giving me away or so,
Yeah.
I do have contact.
Yes, I understand, yeah. Well, I'd just like to say that I think many people don't know, and maybe your daughter doesn't know, that many people were hurt by Yogi Bhajan. And so it's really, I guess it's something that we all regret, having to been with Yogi Bhajan and to have been going along with all of his frauds and his power and manipulation. Because, I mean, I did anyway. I was in that group and with Yogi Bhajan for 30 years. And I went along with it, even though I saw, as you did too, I saw a lot of corruption. I saw a lot of, manipulation on Yogi Bhajan's part, but I kind of went along with it. But I think, the best thing is to forgive, and I know it's hard for people, to forgive a lot of that and just to let go of it. But we were manipulated. You and I both were manipulated by Yogi Bhajan, And if your daughter's listening to this, I just want to say to her that, you know, you regret it, and I regret it that we were in that group and we were manipulated by Yogi Bhajan. So maybe your daughter will see this video and contact you. I hope and pray she does.
Yeah, well, to forgive is not a big deal, and I will. But it's very hard to forget. And
Yes.
you see, the thing is, I still wake up very early in the morning till 6:15. I do sadhana. I'm not using any of the mantra to create, so never again. But I do different things. I do yoga, meditation, sit in silence. I pray, and I forgive people, and I have a great time doing that. And I'm actually on my way to India to spend the last part of my life in India.
Oh, great.
The Brahmin that I met. In Rishikesh, and he's a yoga teacher, certified by the government, and he teaches courses, basic principle of yoga, no bullshit, no hocus pocus, around it.
Yeah.
Just straightforward yoga. And I have great contact with him. So the thing is that the reason I'm doing this right now with you is just to warn the world that any kind of organization, there's always something behind it we don't see. And when shit happens, that's when our eyes start opening up and we see the truth behind the truth.
Yeah.
And I just hope that a lot of people within these organizations, are going to wake up. Because I do believe, and I do experience, that the real teacher is within inside of ourselves. And once we balance out the left and the right hemisphere of our brain, we become a balanced person, we become in balance with the universe, which in the religion they call God, but with being balanced with the universe, the teacher will awaken inside of you. And I believe, and I feel that teacher is going to guide you towards the light. And that's what I believe.
Yeah, Waheguru. Okay, Michael, well, it's really good talking to you. And is there anything else you wanted to add at all to what we talked about?
I'm very thankful that I met you and that you do this for me and for the rest of the world that want to wake up. And the last thing I want to say, the real teacher is within inside of you, and get in touch with it, so you can be guided towards the light that we all want to go to.
Waheguru. Okay, so thank you very much for your time, and I'm going to be posting this on YouTube here in just a little while, so I'll send you a link to it as well. Okay, I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Waheguru Khalsa, Waheguru Fateh.